I said prostate.
Is everybody good?
Oh, wait, no, sorry.
Hold on, let me situate myself.
Okay.
Somebody hit start the round.
Trent, did you do that?
Alright, so
I did it too.
wait, did you give me the
I have it from like pep talk. You didn't get it?
can I just
Yeah. Is it not?
16 start?
Okay. Oh, I sent it to the other Kevin Lee. That's why. Here. What is it?
KLE16 at sty.ed.
Just make sure you're loud. Somebody has to be quiet.
Trent, what does yours start with again?
Oh my god.
Two times the spreading.
Okay, I'll send it again, Kevin.
It's a single flight of doubles.
Should we get going?
Wait, I still haven't.
That one I already.
Did you send it to me right now?
Here. You just type it in.
Okay.
Oh. Probably a Y. Okay. Try number 3.
They're still, they still not.
Is it all is it the same app you're emailing out each time?
I changed it up a little bit.
Oh no.
Each time you email it. No, it's the same lab.
It's just emailing.
Oh, yeah.
every Kevin
Yes.
Lee in
Yes, it is the same affirmative each
As far as I know,
time.
there are only 2 Kevin Lees on the circuit.
If Dave Houston comes in here and sees his app hasn't started, we're all gonna die.
Okay, you got it? Okay. Will one of you say like loud?
Loud.
Perfect. Ethics must justify an action theory or a way to understand action coherently. Action and ethics can only be conceived of in terms of what makes it good for the agent, as the only thing that distinguishes action from causal influence is purpose. McIntyre. If my head nods may be a sign of a center or nervous state, to explain the nod as saying yes is to give it a role in the context of human action. To explain the nod is to take it to assert that the nod was something that happened. To understand it is to ask for reasons. We make individual deeds and social practices intelligible by showing how they connect with desires. A priori principles fail to explain action because there's a divergence between the principles that justify action and the empirical world. The abstraction makes practical reason unsuitable because we cannot explain the action of individuals to agency. We don't understand. This means that we can never be sure that our practical judgments amount to knowledge because we must ascertain that our principles of judgment can get a community of practical rational means. The solution is to explain our action through reference to the life form, which is the entity that contains within it all the vital characteristics that define the individual. Thompson, an individual self-conscious possible where all the political terms anyone has ever imagined attachable oneself to self nowhere is always relating himself to form and representing any animal instinct I bring to it. A turn distinct to unity. Self-consciousness is a feature of the life form itself. The content of the life form is a series of propositions that define the same as of the form X, Y. For example, it is true that that any bear of the form mosquito moves from an egg to an adult with wings. In cases where nothing goes wrong, the life form is able to fully explain these particular facts because they accord with the natural history of the mosquito. Thus, the standard is evincing the flourishing of the form. This entails promoting conditions that allows the agency to be defined in order to determine whether an action is consistent with the flourishing of the form. The evaluation is what the agent was tending, not the consequence of one. To account for all foreseen impacts of paralyzed action because the individuals become morally culpable for all actions and affairs, not just so that factor of the will. Second, induction is circular because it relies on the assumption that nature will hold uniform, but we can only reach that conclusion through natural reasoning based on observation of past events. Third, anybody can invent a positive or negative consequences out of all the potential impacts that an action can have. So consequentialism can be taken advantage of by the powerful who can claim that consequences happen in favor of whatever they desire. Prefer this standard. Additionally, my favorite is key to solving all forms of oppression. McIntyre 2. To discover what we share to acquire a new moral standpoint, what do I want can be answered by discovery that I want, we want coincide. Solidarity comes to light in the discovery that of what we want. The person who cuts himself off from other people says, at first I want to make art and unintelligible and denying the rights and desires of others. You deny that they share rights and desires and rights in the same way. You only possess either insofar as you have them in common. Also, the community is a precondition to recognizing a moral wrong has occurred because we identify those things in relation to the form offense. I defend the resolution as that general principle. The state is an agent who rises to reform in relation to other states. Theories of state construction and interaction fail to explain individual state action because purpose is drawn from socially constructed ideals and immalleable. Perceiving that the state as such renders actions like development is a gift from one agent to another. Vittorio 3. The agency of states can be approached as socially constituted. The state is an ontologically real agent whose identities, interests, and power capabilities are constituted in relation to other states. They can be very conceptualized as they give extended from one country to the next. That's offense 1. A system of contingent interaction between states is a necessary condition of state agency development. Systems foster those social relationships needed to create the community states, making it intrinsically virtuous. That affirms this interaction mandates recognition that is a prerequisite of state agency. Category 2. Fortnite is a voluntary sense of resources, giving difference from other forms of resource allocation because it focuses the social relation that is created. A give creates a social obligation to reciprocate. If it is returned, the relationship is rejected. If it is accepted, the obligation to reciprocate becomes very powerful. The obligation would create a sense of common life. Such a practice could naturalize a social hierarchy, contributing to social cohesion. The give transform the powerful into the generous. Second, Institutionalizing practices like gift giving in society is key to cultivating communal virtue that affirms gives and views the receiver with the power to recognize the virtue in the giver giving, allowing states to determine what to strive towards to be consistent with the life form. Rhetoric 3. The justification for giving is rooted in a tradition that emphasizes the virtue. Virtue as its point of reference is the set of normative prescription for the flourishing of virtue in society. Institutionalization runs at the juncture between a virtue's disposition and its external effect. Gifts provide the most quantifiable measure of an individual's virtue as well as the opportunity for the intermediaries that authenticate them such that they can materialize social ideas. It creates an added fiction of reciprocal moral agency. Underview. First, the role of the ballot is to determine favorite arguments of whether the resolution statement is true or false by a substantially justified ethical framework. A point, the trusting paradigm comes from mature policies by fostering real education, teaches ways how to be successful advocates for real solution. Parents 15. Debate provides a unique forum where we review the process of warranting is being valuable. The valuing skills garnered arise from the process of debating on the content of the arguments of a particular pedagogical point. The process of truth testing teaches how to make decisions. The re-role. B point, creating the role of judge and educator that needs to enforce certain sorts of norms, forces judge in the course of role that makes any attempts at meaningful education pointless and reentrenches the authoritarian logic of violence. Ricker. Fundamental to critical pedagogy that the teacher knows best. So critical pedagogy presents itself as opposite so to dominant forces services that is nevertheless reinscribes authoritarian model. Liberatory pedagogy is often camouflage pedagogical violence within a disciplinary range of power. Students usually go through their liberatory motions but it remains an open question whether they carry an oppositional politics with them. See? Judges only have the jurisdiction to adjust the two-setting paradigm. No activity can provide the adjudicator the authority to reassess the activity goals within any other paradigm leads to arbitrariness and judgment. Event. Verse 15. A maximum that provides the judge with the authority to vote on their assessment of the activity goals needs to only emphasize the arbitrary elements of debate. For example, one judge who believes that the best debater is the one who establishes a philosophy. No debater would feel comfortable for a judge voting on the EC framework with a neg 1 contention level offense beneath that framework. D point. Your role the ballot collapses into truth testing. All statements evolve into some conception of truth of falsity. Fragile 3. We cannot recognize the thing without at the same time realizing that this thing is true. Exponential scent of violence has the same content as the sentence it is true. Exponential of violence. Nothing is added to the thought by my ascribing to the property of truth. Also, roll the ballot contestation is relevant. It's alternative roll the ballot once he moves statements of AC offense and gives the neck better quality reaction. The roll the ballot also kills education because instead of clashing on whether the AC is good, we talk about framing issues. Also, switch sides, also vaccines. You can choose what you want to the roll the ballot to be when you affirm. Second, to defend the counter-accuracy that isn't to go the negative that it must prove that we don't do the effort to the accuracy. For example, if a professor procrastinates, has to write a review that he's best qualified to write, but knows that if he says yes, he'll never actually complete the review. He ought to say no since it's better than the actual alternative. Jackson and Parker. Saying yes is the best action, namely saying yes is the best action, namely saying yes and writing is equal to the saying yes is the worst action, saying yes but failing to write actions no holds that we arbitrate between the two by reference over procrastinating but do. If anything is true about procrastinating is that he ought not delay the review delaying, but saying yes would cause it on to delay this or delaying the review, so something he ought not do, so saying yes. Third, presume absence since affirming is harder, so time means I'm the better debater. April signifies bias proves and all night theory should be waiting against the bias because otherwise after users perfectly rectifies it. Fourth, half gets one or theory they can be easily abused in the MC because I have no ability to call them out on it. They always any other arguments because there's literally no way for me to win the round with that one or theory. Also one or theory is a reason to drop the video because the feature too short to be able to win substance and theory also no neg RBI because it would be impossible to check NC abuse and since a 6-minute NR could go all in on theory disincentivizing one or theory. Fifth, theory comes before the role of the ballot. A point, an unfair model kills the incentive for people to debate which controls the internally into their discussion. B point, debaters need a fair opportunity to engage in your role of ballot and the judge must be able to adjudicate who won on your framing meaning is a prerequisite. 6 point, this has 6 after theory comes first one time excuse against me since I have 4 minutes to answer a 7 NC and pre-game 6 minutes of an hour response with otherwise a negative force me to cover bad theory. Second, because there's already side bias any abuse by then it makes it virtually impossible for me to win meaning death and give you 2% after you. 7, the name must gain offense from a most one unconditional right of the ballot, unconditional right of the ballot, independently of the debate that articulates a distinct judge obligation multiple terms are non-rights of the ballot. 8 point is a key to abstract since otherwise then they can just play the debate around and collapse whatever layer they have and heavily undercovers in the one RB point is class as interforce and to engage in the AC rather than reading several reclusive layers.
So you're gonna read like
8.
just countermeasures.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Everything else is read, right?
Yeah.
Are you good for class 6? Okay, so let's start from the interview. So does theory come before the acceptance of the act? Okay, cool. Let's go to the top. You say that, what were the, so you said that, let's go to 2 justifications about under the standard. What does the first one say? To account for all proceeding class. What does that mean? Oh, so just like you shouldn't defend consequences?
Yeah, it's just consequences bad.
Okay, so if we prove that the intents of the act are bad, I should win.
Yeah.
Cool.
Under my framework, obviously.
Yeah, that's fine. What does the McIntyre say? Why do you solve for openness regression?
Oh, McIntyre 2?
Yeah.
So the argument is that in order for anybody to like carry out their desires or say that they have a right, they only have the ability to do that insofar as they recognize that other people have those same desires or other people have
so
those
we
same
need
rights.
to recognize other people. Is that what this card
Is that a
says?
question? Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's fine.
Recognize like their rights
sure.
in order to understand
Let's
what
go
we
to
want in the first place.
Second spike. What does this mean to defend the counter advocacies in the scope? I have to prove we don't do the actual do my advocacy.
Yeah, sure. I think Trent's going to be a big fan of this argument. So the argument is that in order to say that we should do something, a prerequisite to that is knowing what will happen if we don't do the aft. So I'll give the example that the card gives. Professor procrastinate.
So I have to establish that we should do our neg, or that that we should do.
That if we don't do the AF, we will do like the counter
Means that
plan
we
or the
will
all.
do, like, like necessarily that will happen.
Yes.
Wait, why?
Sure. So that's the argument I was getting to. So I'll give you the example that Professor Procrastinate
Okay.
explains. So the question is, should he or should he not write the review?
Mm.
We know that because he is Professor Procrastinate, he will not write the review. So although we may say, like, as a general principle, he should write the review because it's a good thing, to determine whether or not he should, we have to look to what will happen and what will, like, actually happen. So because he is Professor Procrastinate, he will actually not end up writing the review.
Okay,
So
that's fine. Cool. Let's go to wait, so the last, what the last spike, so what counts as one unconda review?
sure. So it's an independent layer of the debate that identifies a distinct judge obligation.
So, like, for example, like, if I read different voters in a single, like, piece, like, in a single off, would that count as not
Like
one
fairness in
unconda?
education,
Yeah.
that's one layer.
Okay, that's fine. And so, wait, so fairness is the biggest impact?
Theory
Let's go to the presumed math argument. Do you have a p-value for the study that you cite?
I'm taking stats next year, so I don't know what that means.
Okay, so you don't prove the statistical significance of your study?
I'd like the statistic.
Okay, I don't really like it. Let's go to, actually that's fine, I'll take that. You're a junior, right? Alright. Okay, 206. It can be free off case.
On case where you started.
It'll be on the interview actually first.
Okay.
An overview to the interview though, and then the rest. Alright, how do we all get it?
Yeah. I'm good.
Is someone else good?
Speak loudly.
Alright. Yeah, Christian, you good? Alright. The one he sees premise on politics is a wide depth notions that eyes always being also regression, the different questions, calls for a politics confirming causes become naturalized causes of violence, call for forms of perfection, like the brain for causes when saving sets dependence on master, the only abandoning the absolute hopes versus myth, the progress of coherence of the negation, the slave farley of five, the movement, slave segregation, whatever right of blacks and not freedom, the women, slavery, for reconcile stories for power, a problem, slave, life, on the rule of last year, for reconcile, when the balance to its matter is the slave and competency on possible reconciliation, free by willing self and free, the slave about announcers, not what place for legally cultivates the law, the slave relation, the way civil society and subjectivity coherence, negation, slave through existence, through social death, alienation, good, Judas, finds traits, position, slave, defined by a fungibility was avoided social relation and opposition to humanity, how we relate to its conditions, all this and forth this world about is to endorse to be who advocates the best method in solidarity with the position of slave Aaron 16. The slave relation is defined by social death and alienation, Judas, limits, finds can be a combination of being experiential social avoids relationship, social relation, product, relation, object, slave, finds themselves in a position varied systems, the non-human attracted object, the ontology rejection is defined by accumulation, fungibility, formation, to slave relation, prejudice, capital, through the perpetuation form of social and civil depth, theoretical racial rejection, chance for epidermal racial construction blocked in such a way. No, racial by culture exists. The symbolic death means that humanity's structures and antagonists with black bodies. A symbolic between belonging, safeguarded with civil society, through social reinforcements, through racial life, pathos is different. The only ethical demand, the one that calls for the end of the world is self, the affirmative represents the paradigm with the conflict of America, a conflict with the paradigm of America, which is challenge of antagonists with divines that undergirds that very same paradigm. Wilderness and the grammars are the only ethical grammars available in modernity. They are to divines that underwrites the world, capacity thinking existence, not the world of practice, but the world of self. It was unethical for the democracy to be the slave structure of the U.S. antagonists would be dismantled, ethical majority would no longer sound like action, but we be self important conflicts that have been promoted to antagonists. The question to go to the heart of the ethical are unspeakable. Second off. Interpretation on 2017 November December LD talk for minutes based on specifying delineating text and the one to see what type of developmental assistance that they defend. There are multiple types of development assistance, foreign direct investment, foreign trade, development via the OECD, bilaterally, multilaterally, military aid or humanitarian assistance violation. They don't specify in the speech standards. First, strategy and possibly determine one strategy against the what discussion because the weapon condition of the 1 year mood also means the one to see causes. If the strategy also interpret reading this from the UN or funding it or capital imperialism things that depend on what kind of system you defend. Also, the 1 year research means the Afghans some time advantage to win the new terms of debate and give them ready behind possible media to instruct your key difference and access value without the constructive coherent strategy. Second, vagueness. Vague able to consider specification would impact desirability of different. For example, military would be really bad. Unafraid with humanitarian aid might not. Also, things like multilateral and bilateral change the different ways that different countries interact, which would be different under virtue. At this prevents from probably engaging in specificity. You obviously skip the red text. A specific key to education in the context of your frame is the only way to have an in-depth discussion. 3, a class should be if you read up on certain types of assistance, I read just the other types of assistance. There's no way for us to arguments and debate between them. It's not better just specify point of conversation. Class unique debate and solely would develop arguments means the strong English education also independent resolvability voted. If we don't class judge, no way to determine who is winning, which is the judge independent, which destroys every other impact of debate. Also, cross instance of one judge not obligated for crosses we can't validate concession. Second, better set norms because not everyone will always remember to ask to incentivize ways just be super abused and hope they don't get caught for. So not enough time to look over evidence to make sure it's consistent with new specification because they could all be talking different forms of aid voters. Fairness because one debate is competitive to constrain the judge's ability to determine the better debate which can shift the about second posting behind on other arguments even the better constrain evaluate other ladies education because one should only add over impact second schools don't debate gives education mean it's a power question any other impact competing interests one by such and if it's arbitrary balance second if you just right balance can mind for justice often deep when competing is drop the debate around the random future which helps behind the rest of the base second industry future years no arguments one shall fight counter versus counter should somebody use always being in theory church can be sick on theories and they can generally link our pattern so it's reciprocal our risk theory 2 and 3 knowledge you should win for making logic back and train debate it would be incoherent to not follow logic. Third off. Interpretation of the affirmative makes theoretical arguments that restrict the negative strategy. Because look, they must give an example of a possible negative strategy in the 1AC that meets the condition of the AC spike violation. They don't do that until any sex in the 1AC standards. First, stable grounds possible. You know how you look in spikes because they are both not coming words until there's possible to choose the one strategy doesn't violate anything. A stable ground of key to fairness determines the roots of the value of the assets. You also when I'm able to second resolvability. If you actively concede what works under your model debate, we don't need to check every violation. Otherwise, you just have to talk through whether I meet every single one of the possible violations they have would not be practical. Key to resolve the theory debate in the first. We don't know exactly what a violator don't. 3 theory debate qualities and 3 live with the negative world to look like under the interpretation and possible debate the validity of your world versus if you give me an idea of what the negative world will look like on your perspective. We have a debate about whether that negative ground is good or not. Theory debate quality determines how well the judge is able to value the base, so it's an independent voter now in case. As an overview to the underview, one grammar news journal responses the 1 year chapter relation tape point. I don't know what argument you can go for how it applies to the round. And you only have one justification, they'll kill so one in strategy B point. Paragraph theory super hard flow and catch everything making impossible for me to find one strategy building it up 2 in response to competency C point paradigm issues apply different from shell to shell. For example, drafted argument makes no sense on Kano theory. Second, a hard to get 8 point after get them in prep and finally advantage, so I only get 4 minutes B point. After last piece you can favor the way however they want out with 3 in our all after needs to be weighed against this was on favors only the competency. This is a meta theoretical claim. A theory prefer 1 and 3 and divide 1 year theory after the 2 in our 8 point strategy only 1 response to 1 year theory in the 2 in our gets you structure species and we only get contested answer. I may also get the last person 3 in our B point. George doesn't have extrapolation in 1 year so they can move the 2 in strategy because I don't cross down the clarify arguments we can go for a meeting 2 hour control the blood torrent should really good to be sure then after 3 in our answer C point air nag to counterbalance have 7-6 structural time speech and prefer structural wing arguments after neg since they apply to each round and worse like the chapters communal answer that's best for competing interests which means also precludes meta theory 4. I really want a night Glenbrooks trip. I'm a senior in your junior, so you definitely should have a chance of getting the trophy. Independently means I should win the round above all arguments, even if you want the trophy equally as bad. You're really good and can get an extra overview. Now go to the interview. First, you said you should do roll that through. You should evaluate through theories. That's the reason why fairness comes first. You say we should look at real education. No, we're arguing is that this kind of account for things like anti-blackness because they don't have access to the forms of the education in the real world, access to the real world. Second, on the record evidence. No, this is non-unique because you also push a norm, which the ballot wouldn't necessarily justify a norm. You take jurisdiction. There's no impact to jurisdiction. If they all voted outside the jurisdiction, nothing would actually happen in the round. And therefore, you say default to truth. I can turn that probably means that you can truth test under our rule about the truth or falsity of the negative or of the affirmative under our rule about, which means that truth testing is not specific to the resolution. Now, you say that I cannot consist rule about one. One is that you say I can't consist rule about one that everything necessarily moves off, and so it's not unique to indicting your rule about. Second, it's a question of whether your education is good or you haven't justified. If our rule that indicts whether your educational practices are good or not, then clearly we want your rule about education. Now, you say that I have a counter FCR. Yes, we say that we necessarily have to deny. No, this is a bad argument because it is racist. It depends on you to justify why things like we should ignore anti-blackness if we don't do the F, which means that you should independently reject this argument. Now, you say from this argument, no, you don't have a p-value, so that we don't know if this is legitimately true or not because there's no statistical significance. It could just have been by chance in the study. Now, and your sixth point is that you said the after comes from particular time. There's not a structural claim. Then you say they're side bys. We've turned side bys, which probably means that reason you should err on negative first. You say I get one non-counter root to the body because first I'm able to collapse nuts on you. You can also collapse out, so you get two speeches. The one here can shift the direction of the debate, and the two are completely collapse. And I have a turn right answer, probably means your collapsing is now worse. Again, you say clash no turn. You get more points of class by read different arguments. You can weigh between them and then choose which one you think clash the most with your F, and then we get clash from that. And now let's go to the rest of the F. So first you say I need some action theory. Well, there's some solve this argument because we said that there's a general practice or general thing that's the structure of anti-blackness that all of our action should be based on. Second is that the structure of anti-action theory because it says that precludes that we have agency, which excludes the black body because black does not have agency within civil society. Now you say that there's a life form because it's a danger and characteristic. This idea, this in itself links to the wilderness and independently. The idea that there's certain characteristics that justify humanity is what allows us to have a sort of grammar against the suffering the gratuitous violence of the slave. Now I'm not going to try to you said this is a prerequisite to a critique because you get to recognize other people. But we prove that this community is not accessible to black people, i.e. they don't have agency within civil society. That means none of these things out of the F would be able to resolve any of these arguments. Now, on your framework, there's no singular life form that we can appeal to offer humans because people just reject instincts into how to act for themselves. There's no necessary set of norms that constitute humanity. Second, they can't generate coherent set of requirements because no way for something to violate all the life form things are constituted by certain species by doing certain things. This was the same set of standards we can judge them that we judge them. So cut it after but.
And you didn't read anything below that.
Yeah.
Did you read everything above that?
Yep.
Okay. You get across.
Yep.
Okay. What was the violation on the third inter? Like, what specifically?
That you didn't give an example.
But like, what was something that? What was the spike or the argument that inhibited your ability to read certain things?
I think a lot of them were offensive. For example, things like the point is the point of the shell is that it is unclear, right? And unclear what of those are offensive
so even if I don't have any spikes in the app, I still have to do this?
No, this is saying that if you make theoretical indicts, right? You said that there's certain strategies that you can read. Right, my argument is that those are unclear. I can isolate specific ones, which just proves the abuse. If you provide an example of a negative strategy, then I can prove, like, the bunch of claims that you make in the app, I can compare against a negative strategy to determine whether your interpretation is good.
Or something the app didn't do that.
Okay, so an example would be like one on condo root, and there are a bunch of other examples, but the point is that I can point them all out.
The app so that I can respond.
I don't think you're understanding the abuse story. The argument is that you have a bunch of different things in a bunch of different places, right? And so the fact that I have to go through each one and isolate how those things interact and how they can confront a coherent negative strategy that is fair, that is very unclear, and I'm not able to do that.
I want to know which ones you have to go through.
Okay, you're literally not listening to me.
Okay, that's fine. Did you accept any arguments between grant new true and null responses to 1AR extrapolations and harder to negate?
Wait, what do you mean? Wait.
When you were giving the overview of the app.
No.
You didn't?
No.
So what was this meta-theoretical claim that you made?
No. Yeah, I guess I was just explaining the hard to negate is meta theory.
Okay. Do you make any arguments why meta theory comes first?
Well, no, the argument is that basically any theory that you read, any offense that you generate off of that shell is not actual offense. It's just to compensate for a structural skew that it was already hard to negate.
Okay, explain that argument.
What?
Explain that argument.
Yes, so our argument, if it's already structurally harder to negate, then anything that I've done that was abuse is justified, right? Which means it's a question of whether you can win offense on a meta-theoretical claim.
Okay. So what was the response? You only made one response to the presumed neg side bias, right?
Well, our argument is that there's just like that like you literally cannot prove.
That's it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, what's a p-value?
P-value? Sure, a p-value is basically like once you do a statistical study, a p-value tells you like the percent chance that something is statistically significant or that the result that you got from the study was like something that was not based on luck. For example, like like for example, like a 51% bias could just be by luck or based on the specific study that was done with a specific set of like rounds, right? But after you test this one, you get a p-value that tells you like, okay, well like this is the percent chance that result that you got was like actually based on luck or something that proves that there's some sort of like claim or some sort of a bias that was inherent
Do you have any
in the
arguments
study.
as to why your like analytic claims can be for empirical claims?
Well, that's not an empirical claim because you can't even win that claim because you have to prove that that is a bias.
Okay, but assuming I beat back the p-value argument.
Well, you haven't made any weighing arguments either. And also, I would say
that's not my question. I just want to make sure you didn't make any in the last speech.
What do you mean? Just like weighing arguments between
Empirical and
empirics and
analytic
analytics.
arguments.
I don't take a stance yet.
Okay, that's fine. Starting track. Thanks. Explain the first piece of Farley evidence.
Sure, the Farley evidence says that when you orient yourself...
No, specific to the app. So like how does the app orient itself in that way?
Sure. The app orients itself, like, for example, the impacts that you read, for example, things like on the Roll About, where you say we have real education that can, like, then benefit the things that we do and improve our, like...
So the link is, like, truth testing?
Not necessarily just truth testing, but different parts of the app. For example, things like life form itself, the idea that there are some characteristics that define us or that define what counts as humanity is what... That grammar is only coherent through the negation of the slave.
Okay. You conceded theory comes before the roll of the ballot, right?
Yep.
Okay, I have a minute left. Order's gonna be new off, the AC underview, then the theory shells in the order he read them, the, like, roll of the ballots stuff on the underview, so truth testing, and then AC top down. I will make sure to signpost.
Sorry, what's the order again?
So it's gonna start with a new off, and then it's gonna be, the AC underview, the theory stuff. So first extending my stuff and then responding to his, and then I can signpost from there if that's easier. I'm sending out new stuff, so. Okay, the doc sent. Also, I'm gonna extend the interp a little differently, so.
The text of the intern?
Text the interp, so just keep that in mind. Do you want me to write it down?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll just write it down on your doc then. Or do you want me to resend the whole thing?
Let me just...
Everybody good?
Speak loudly.
I will.
Wait one sec. Yeah.
Okay, hold on. Okay, continue.
A is the interpretation. If the negative reads multiple pre-fiat voting issues, the one and they must specify which comes first. In that speech of violation, they read a roll the ballot and theory voters such as fairness and education without weighing them. Also, they didn't do that in the speech. Classify. C is the standard for strategy. Not specifying which comes first makes them since they can kick one and collapse the one and collapse the one and undercover. So I can't form a current strategy saying I can weigh is nonsense. Since I will always lose a segment into one where they can collapse whatever they are head on when the weighing debate strategy is independent voter because they take the power out of my hands, forcing you to vote for the better teacher. Also controls the internally to being able to engage in both layers because I don't know how to, which means that this shall comes prior. Second engagement, it is harder for me to engage in depth on each layer, which would obviously be best under the role of voters so that they're just reading the for purposes instead of the real ones. This delegitimize their impacts, i.e. fairness, education, and equality, taking away credence from those impacts, might run this independent reason to drop them, and this bigger impacts in the case since it infinitely justifies the person their disposition towards the case also harms the progress because people won't be incentivized to engage to be educated when the debater doesn't even care about their impacts. Also classify all the arguments as to why cause text is bad. That was in the first shell because obviously they couldn't because they shouldn't that's why I shouldn't have asked in cross examination. Now because of the fairness and education voters also there were multiple independent voters which are going to be outweighing all their links to fairness and education because it comes as a prerequisite of fairness and education. Now a couple of things that you're going to be extending from the AC interview. Go there. Extend the F gets 1 and 3 because it's up to you, because otherwise I allow the negative to be infinitely elusive. When extend that I get 1 and 3 is a reason to draw the debate because the speech is too short to be influenced substance theory. He's also conceded that he doesn't get an RBI because it would be possible to check back and see because he would literally just jump for 6 minutes on an RBI and the theory debate proper, which means that I wouldn't have the ability to win. Which means that I wouldn't have the ability to win caused by the arguments for competing interpretation from Michelle. Now go to the specific issues that he reads. Starting on his argument says why you should grant him the two responses to one error separation. First of all, overview. At least you give me paradigm issues. These arguments, all these arguments are specific to specific to theory, specific to interpretations that he can me. However, you obviously, which means that the paradigm issues don't bite into any of these shells. Go to his A point. He says he doesn't know how it apply or how it go for. However, you could it's very clear in the affirmative. I.e., you cannot read one unconditional out of the ballot. Little clear about any cross examination. Also, you say that how to flow. However, the first speech all solves. You had the ability to read them. You could just get a better flowing. Also, you said that they apply differently to different shells. However, no, I literally read paradigm issues in the AC, which solves all the abuse. Then you say it's hard to do affirmative negate. However, classify the 8% next time by C. He makes this argument as to why you don't know the p value. You have a couple of problems with this. First of all, it's empirical, which means that outweighs analytic arguments. He makes analytic arguments. However, empiricism encompasses all the analytic arguments, which means that it outweighs second. It comes from B briefly, which means that even if I don't know the p value, they probably know the p value, which means that you should default to. Also, it's the only thing we have, which means that we should also default to it. If you don't know what a p-value is, and he didn't explain the p-value in his own speech, then you also don't have the jurisdiction to vote on it. Now go to the other arguments. He says that you should prefer one and theory and evaluate it first. However, all these arguments, he's conceded that if I win side by side, then that means all my theory outweighs. That was the second argument under reasons why theory comes first, which means that you can be evaluating that. Also, if he makes a new extrapolation of it, then you should definitely allow me to go. Then you should definitely allow me to go. Then respond to them in the 2 AR. Now go to his first interpretation about how. Go to his second interpretation about how to give an example. I told him what an unconditional route to the ballot. I told him what an unconditional route to the ballot was. Explicitly in the AC. I literally defined what it was, which means that I also go to a second interpretation, counter interpretation, the affirmative, converse to the interpretation. If the affirmative defends the resolution of general principle, I don't defend implementation, which means that I don't have to specify the method by which I use defend implementation, which means that it also takes out other shells. Now go to the AC proper, extend the truth that's in world of going for the breaker evidence, extend Ricker, which is that creating the role of judge and educator, then use of force, social north is bad because it places the judge in an authoritarian issue and in an authoritarian position. This independent reason to drop them and like a double turn onto their framework because they say that we should not be authoritarian and they say that we should not oppress people. However, you were doing that in a pre-fiat manner, which means that it outweighs also just generic theory weighing. First of all, meta theory comes first. I already made the argument in the shell itself. Also, meta theory comes first. Also, the shells come first because it's an independent voter, which outweighs other independent voters. Specifically, strategy skew outweighs any independent voters they had because they're only relevant insofar as you had the ability to debate in the first place, and that requires the ability to prepare for strategy.
Alright, how much more? No, 208. Okay. It's going to be on my overview to his underview. Then actually no, so starting first on his underview, then my overview to his underview, then the 1 air shell, then the 2 shells in the order that I read them.
Sorry, say again where you're starting.
I'm starting on his underview. One sec. Okay, is everyone good? Oh, first answer is really quick. Independent voter that he makes him that his underview. First he says it's a thorough chamber. You can see the argument that is non-unique. I use set norms either, which means either way the judge has some sort of authority, which means that it's not specific to things like oppression, supervised just traits and norms. Second is that you not just like an independent voter in this species. The new implication in this speech. Second, there's that we can see fairness. First, you mean it's a question of whether you prove truth or falsity of this claim. Absent of some sort of fairness claim. There's a question of truth testing now. You say strategy outweighs another fairness argument. No, we should evaluate and strengthen like if you completely conceded on other independent voters and I put sufficient defense on the strategy argument on his 1 year shell, then you should clearly vote for those arguments first. Now, my overview. Biggest mistake is that he conceded the fourth argument is that I really want a nice Glenbrooks trophy. This is a trophy a priori that you should independent vote me because I want a nice trophy. I'm missing you're a junior, you definitely have a chance of getting the trophy. Independently means I should win the round above all arguments. You can see that this is a weighing argument, so why this outweighs all other arguments. Also, operates as an I meet on his shell because I clearly know this independent voter outweighs all other framework arguments in the round. This is very clear in this speech. Also, delineated text. Also, even if you want the trophy equally as bad, you're really good and you can get an extra, which means that there is no offense to this argument. This is completely conceded 100% strength. Even if you think other voters matters, this very, very clearly comes first. So I'll go to the other arguments first. Go on a harder negate. He says there's 8% next side bias. No, the opponent of p-value is that if you don't have a p-value, then you cannot prove the empirical claim in the first place. So even if you say it's empiric, you also have an extended warrant as to why empirical claims matter or why they matter over analytics. You just say that they come first, but then you should give them back. You force them to extend a warrant. Now you say it's for V briefly, but yes, people publish studies all the time, even if they're not statistically conclusive. They also study so people know about these different percentages. They're not necessarily conclusive. Then you say that if the judges don't know what a p-value is, one is that this is regressive. The idea that we have to literally define everything because we don't know if the judge understands or not know if there's just a general sense of what it means, then you should vote off of it. Also, the implication is very clear. Second, is that you should just vote if I explained it in cross-examination. If you can vote off of different cross-examination, clearly things I say in cross-examination will still matter, which means you still vote off. And now you vote off of the trophy a priori. But even then, on the 1 air shell. I very easily meet the shell. This is the same shell grant that I'll be read in my run at Bronx. The shell that I very clearly meet because of the fairness voter. On the fairness vote, I very clearly specify that it comes for all other voters and comes with the role about because I say that the second argument that justifies fairness is that it puts me behind on other arguments mean in meta constraint on evaluating the other layers, which mean in a delineated text I specified why fairness comes for all of the voters. This very clearly meets the shell. There is no offense on the shell, but even then for even the counter is conversive interpretation. Also, you specking solves all this. Also, it's not better because if you spec, then you get to go for the argument that you think or the layer that you have the best offense on, and that allows you to better your strategy. But even then, all the cross-examination argument only applies specifically to the idea of substantive issues. All those cross-examination arguments, for example, to be able to check whether your evidence is specific to not enough time to check over the fact that your evidence is specific to your need specification is stuff that only justifies no cross-examination on things like substantive issues versus on theoretical issues. Cross-examination is still probably really good because that means we can come to a compromise about certain things. Also, because if we have a conversation that I don't specifically just arbitrarily I don't just arbitrarily specify, I have to justify that is a better form of data, which means that I always in the offense you're winning on your trail. Also, on strategy doesn't matter because if you have to go for harder strategies, then that's not better. But even then, you should vote on the strength of link because if I'm winning sufficient defense on his shell versus he is literally not winning even a piece of offense on either of the two shells, then you should still vote on both of those. Now, let's go to each of the shells. First, extend the second shell that on the chapter 27 November, somebody else topic affirmative is supposed to dealing text and want to see what type of developmental assistance they defend that. There are different types of assistance. His only argument here is that you can defend the resolution in general principles and implementation would not matter. No argument is that it will still matter in terms of attention. For example, the intent to have like all these different countries only to, for example, multilateral aid in which all these countries only just pool their money into the UN probably be a different interaction between developed countries and underdeveloped countries versus, for example, saying that it should be bilateral aid would be a country directly bringing assistance to another country, which means even these things would matter not even in a non-consequentialist perspective because those things are matter in terms of what you actually advocate, which means those things will still matter in things that I lose this as I may be able to read. Also, you can see on the strategy argument, it's impossible to determine one strategy against the F, and we know it just as I can read it. Also, this strategy argument completely conceded versus that I have very clearly I mean in the 1 air shell, then this strategy claim also clearly outweighs you because I moved all 7 minutes of oneness. If you can just shift out of random distance that I read, I list a bunch of this. For example, you underfunding or cap imperials and links that all those things would still matter in terms of your affirmative, which means that even if you read it without as a general principle that it doesn't mean that you can get out of this argument. Second is the vagueness or vagueness argument that vagueness are undebatable because this term justification would impact desirability after 50% military aid would be really bad or other things, which means that's key to education. Now, on the clash, you extend the clash argument. You can see that clash is also is an independent resolvability. Voted for no clash to judge, no way determining who is when it least to judge independent which choice every other impacted view. So at this point, you have a bunch of independent votes. You have the trophy a priori, right? You have this argument of resolvability, and then you have things like fairness. So both of those things, he has literally no offense on. For I have some offense under fairness, and you should still vote off strength of link. Also, extend reasons for talking stuff, and there's substantive reasons now. Extend other things like all the voting issues on the second shell. Extend the interpretation of the affirmative with theoretical arguments that are restricted with negative strategy. You look like they must give an example of positive negative strategy, and you want to see that meets the conditions of the AC spikes. Your only arguments that you meet because you define what a one on counter root means. That does not solve any of the abuse on the show. We say you can define what that means. We have to give an example of a negative strategy that meets you. This hex of the interpretation you still do not meet. Also, you don't solve any of the abuse for the stable ground arguments. Probably you know what you will strike within. For example, there are multiple offensive parts of the underview that you can extend a reason that doing different parts of negative strategy, which means it's so incoherent and impossible for me to draw. Also, you can see another internal link to resolvability, which is just as an independent on the other shell, which says that if you actively concede works on your models, you don't need to check every violation of those. You would have to talk through whether I meet every single one of the possible violations in the F. Also, the third argument about theory debate quality, you can see the weighing argument why that is also an independent vote. And also, reason why theory quality determines whether how the judge is able to evaluate the theory debate in the first place. So, the fact that it's a question of whether the judge is able to evaluate the rest of the theory debate, which is that this other vote also particularly outweighs things like the way in which you can evaluate fairness. Even fairness comes to the question whether you can evaluate the theory debate quality. It's unclear if the negative world will look like under the F of the interpretation. It's possible to debate the validity of the word versus if you give an idea of the negative world and looking under respect. We can have a debate about whether the negative world can look under. We can have a debate about whether the negative is good or not. That makes it really hard to debate. So how this round breaks down, trophy a priori first. Even then, harder if I'm winning, harder to negate. It's actually extend the arguments are hard to gain. First, to get infinite parent flying advantage. Even use first and last piece. Just concede arguments where they put some sort of defense on. His arguments are empirical clean, so you should still vote on strength even if you think empirical some first. But I clearly want harder to negate. At that point, any offense he's winning on theory is clearly only to compensate for that. At that point, you can vote on risk of offense, and I did the two shells are just a bunch of defense. And the I meet on the one area shell is very, very clear.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, so order is going to be an overview on the theory debate. You can flow this on my shell. Then extending paradigm issues quickly from the AF. The issues of like, sorry. Okay, sorry. And then like it's going to be weighing on his specific weighing. So like strength of link.
Just start over, please.
Okay, so the theory shell overview. Then the paradigm issues from the AF. And then his specific weighing arguments, like strength of link, negating is harder. Then the shell proper.
Which shell proper?
My shell proper.
Okay.
And then
What's the overview?
it's like the overview is like weighing between the shells, things like that. Like that's going to include the trophy a priori. That's going to be like the line by line of it, like of the standards. And then I can signpost from there. Okay.
Still straight down.
Yeah. I'll try to be very loud. Okay. A couple of issues with the one, and the first is that you have conceded a prerequisite to me being able to create a strategy. The prerequisite to me being able to create a strategy is you specifying these things, certain things in cross-examination, or specifying these certain things in your speech. Insofar as I'm going to be winning the strategy standard, that means that it's going to come before all of his independent voters because I do not have the ability to respond to your independent voters because I do not know if you're going to go for them in the next speech. I don't know which independent voter comes first. I don't know if the a priori comes first. I don't know if fairness comes before everything else because you have a bunch of competing arguments about which things comes comes first, but you don't have a specific delineated text in the one, and that allows me to figure that out, which means that when you which means that if you have any question about which layer comes first, obviously it is going to be my shell, because a prerequisite to being able to figure out, or a prerequisite to being able to evaluate any of those arguments, or my ability to respond to them is my shell in the first place, which means that it comes first. One, prerequisite to evaluating it. Second, prerequisite to my responding to it, which means that you can't even evaluate it. Go to the theory issues itself. Okay. They conceded advocates one area 3 because it allows it stops NC from being abusive. They've also conceded one area 3 to withdraw their beta because to show to be able to themselves the theory. They've also conceded that they don't get an RVI because the 6-minute NR is to show to be able to go on because the 6-minute NR is just going to read a theory dump. Now I'm going to be going I'm going to be going on the line by line of the theory shell first. I'm just going to have I'll answer is weighing at the end. So starting on his IME. First of all, your IME is really bad for two reasons. First of all, you make two different IMEs, which means that you're going to be doing a really bad job on the IME, because you say first you say that the trophy a priori comes before everything else, and then later in the speech you say that the fairness voter comes before everything else, because fairness constrains your ability to respond to certain arguments, which means that you don't meet because you have two independent voters that you say comes first, but I don't know which comes first between them. Also, saying response that you don't have a delineated text, which means that you don't meet these arguments. Now, when the line by line, first of all, you say that I can spec. First of all, you say that I can spec. That means the one that would also take away the offers on your shell. Second of all, you can see the preempt to this, which is that I will always lose to a 6-minute 2-end jump. Now you say strategy, assuming your strategy is good. However, that relies upon you. That relies upon you. That relies upon you winning. That relies upon you winning and negating starter. But I'm probably going to be winning that debate. I'll get to that later. So extend the strategy to use an independent voter because they take the round forcing out of my hands, forcing you to vote for the better cheater, which means that it's going to become before all the arguments, because you can't evaluate like things like resolvability and stable ground. If you like either way, it also controls the internally into all of his standards because they all have the same impact. Because if it takes the round out of your hands, then that is the biggest issue, because that is 100% strength of link to like losing fairness, which you also say is like the highest layer, because it doesn't allow you to go for certain arguments. Now I'm going to be answering your weighing. First of all, you say strength of link weighing. However, I specifically responded to the strength of link weighing. If I do not have the ability to respond to certain arguments specifically because of the times 2, then obviously I'm not going to be able to weigh against this. Also, you say negating starter. First of all, no impact in negating starter. That was not in the last speech. Now I'm going for the argument that you don't have the jurisdiction to vote on arguments that were not warranted in the last speech. He just says in the one, and there was no p. He just said that there was no p value. You don't know what a p value is. I don't know what a p value is. Even if you have some idea what a p value is, then it doesn't matter, because it wasn't warranted in the speech, which means that you don't have the justification. You could be talking about a different p value, which means that you don't have the jurisdiction to vote on it. You just vote on the shell because it comes prior.
Good.